Hi, this is Charles Kelly. Good afternoon, Friday afternoon here in London. Humid and hot, around about 30 degrees. We had the hottest day of the year the other day, and the beaches were packed. In particular, Bournemouth Beach was like Benidorm was. It was just crazy down there, and it does show you that the UK is a small country, relatively speaking. 60 odd million people live in the UK, and it's the size of maybe some of the American states. I think it goes into Texas about 30 times. So it is quite a crowded country. Especially in this part of the world, in the southeast. If you go up to parts of the north, then you see a lot of empty spaces. And in Scotland and Wales, but in England, in particularly anywhere from, say, Milton Keynes downwards and south into the Midlands, it's pretty crowded. You don't see a lot of space, and particularly on the roads are very busy. And since the lockdown restrictions have started to be eased, the roads have got much more busy. And there are a lot of people there on the beach, and which shows you partly that we're a crowded island, partly we don't see the sun as often as some countries do, and partly people must have a lot of time on their hands. To go to the beach midweek to find that beach packed is very unusual. This looked to me like a weekend or a Sunday or a bank holiday weekend. It didn't look like a midweek thing. And why have people got a lot of time on their hands? That's because 25% of the workforce is on furlough, on the job retention scheme. Something like 11 million people, according to Boris Johnson. A lot of self-employed people are finding it difficult. A lot of businesses are closed. And therefore, people seem to have too much time on their hands. You go out to the parks, there are people walking around, cycling, going on family walks. What we need to do is get them back to work, and then the beaches wouldn't be crowded. There's no good point in the government saying we're going to close down the beaches and stop people moving. No, get them back to work. And, I think this furlough scheme has been good to get companies through a difficult period. But somewhere you've got to sort of say, well, hang on a second, how much can the taxpayer keep subsidising people to go to the park and have family walks and watch Netflix and just basically do nothing for months and months and months? And, I see businesses in the high street that frankly could have been opened weeks ago, months ago. I mean, takeaways, businesses are allowed to offer takeaway foods, but why is it a lot of the businesses like McDonald's and a lot of the coffee places did not stay open? Now, you could argue that, maybe they weren't busy enough. But I would argue, well, if they can put their staff on furlough and 80% of the wages are paid by the government, by tax, not the government, you and me, and they can get rates relief on the council tax, then that is probably cheaper to keep it closed and open up and not do much business. So we've been subsidising all of this, and I don't mind keeping businesses going, but to subsidise them to take advantage of the situation seems wrong. I mean, Tesco's were open all throughout the crisis, and they've done very well out of it. They put their prices up, and so on. But they claimed 500 or 600 million on business rates relief. They got that back from the government, and they paid out money to their shareholders. So they were getting money from one hand from the taxpayer and then paying it out to their shareholders. Somehow that doesn't seem right to me. I don't blame them for doing that, because you do what you've got to do in business, but it doesn't seem right to me. But now, that we're talking about the lockdown, but now I go out today and I see that still some of the takeaways are not open. I mean, Greggs is a major takeaway chain. Most of their shops only do takeaway. They might have a couple of seats, counter open for a few people who want to stay there, but it's not a place you go to have a meal, is it? Greggs. You don't take your girlfriend on a first date to Greggs and say, let's sit here by the window. No, Greggs is a takeaway place. Why is it shut? Why is it shut today? Because they can afford to shut. They've got the furlough scheme. They've got the money back from the council tax. But that's coming out of the taxpayers' pockets at the end of the day, and that will take years to pay off. The government here could be in debt to the tune of 300 billion by the end of this year, the longer this bloody lockdown continues. And the longer we continue to allow businesses to be weaned on this furlough scheme, this job retention scheme, which frankly a lot of big companies are completely taking advantage of. You've got a lot of football clubs taking advantage of it. Football clubs, they pay their players hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, and they're furloughing their staff, their ground staff and that sort of thing. And yet they're multi-million-pound businesses, sometimes owned by billionaires, and they're taking money from the taxpayer. It doesn't make sense to me. So do something about it, government. You've got to. Okay, that's my rant over for today. And hi to Shujat, by the way. Great to see you again. Now, today in the news, we see that we're talking about retail, right? Retail has been going through a very difficult period, and a lot of shops have closed down. I've seen a lot of businesses close down. But when you go to these shopping malls, one of the biggest landlords for these shopping malls own the shopping mall. So every shop you see in there are paying premium rents. They're paying perhaps a percentage of their turnover. And at that shopping mall, one of the biggest owners of the shopping malls is a company called INTU, INTU. Now, they were experiencing a bit of problem a few months ago, but now they've gone into administration. They've effectively gone bust. So any shareholders will lose money. They're quoted on the Johannesburg stock market. Shareholders are going to lose money. People who are owed money by INTU will not get paid, unlikely anyway. The taxpayer, you and me, that's you and me, will lose money through unpaid taxes, maybe VAT, whatever. And it will come out the other end as a smaller business. Maybe they'll close down some of their 17 retail parks, 3 in Spain, by the way, I think. And there's one near me, Lakeside, a huge shopping area. But because they haven't been able to trade, they've gone out of business. And this we'll see a pattern of this. We're going to see a lot of companies go out of business. And yes, they'll come back maybe, or someone will buy out some of their assets. The directors will probably walk away with money. The accountants, KPMG in this case, they are going to make millions from this. Their fees will run into millions and millions of pounds. They will make money from this. And it's another reason why we've got to get the economy moving. And sorry, but I think the economy is. Some people say your health is more important, but you can't have a healthcare system without an economy. You can't run a country on a massive £300 billion credit card. You can't just run a company by constantly printing money, which then becomes devalued and will eventually lead to inflation. So we've got to get the economy moving faster than it is now. I mean, this week they've announced that some of the lockdown restrictions are eased, but they keep playing around with it. Why don't they just say, right, if you go out on the street, wear a mask, that's the law. Okay, end of subject, very simple to follow. At the moment, you don't have to wear a mask, but you're advised to, it's guidance, but it wasn't guidance a few months ago. If you get on a bus or train, you should wear a mask, but how are you going to enforce that? You don't have to wear masks in shops. And this week they've announced that certain businesses can open from the 4th of July. I don't know why they couldn't just do it from now, but from the 4th of July. And pubs, if they're still in business by then, will be able to open, but subject to new restrictions. You can't order a drink at the bar, which they call vertical drinking. So you can do horizontal drinking, but not vertical drinking. Well, horizontal is what happens after you've had a few too many vertical drinks. But they can start opening up again, which is good news. Cinemas can open up, but theatres can open up, but they can't put on a live performance. What? Can you say that again? Yeah. Theatres can open up, but they can't put on a live performance. What the hell use is that? Come on, Minister, get this sorted. How comes you can go and see a movie on the screen from Hollywood probably, but you can't put on your live show in the West End and the theatres that bring in millions of tourists? And in the meantime, they've still got a 14-day quarantine restriction on people coming into the country. Great. Well, that's really helpful, isn't it? To help get the tourist industry moving again. So these are things that just annoy me. And I was in town this week and I saw that Oxford Street, one of the biggest shopping streets in the whole of Europe, was empty. It looked like a cold winter's Sunday morning, maybe a bank holiday when no shops are open. And if you look at my Facebook page, on the community page, Money Tips community page, or on moneytipsdaily.com, you can see a video of that and how quiet it was on Oxford Street, which is normally teeming with people anytime, 7 days a week, but it was dead. And many of the shops are either not doing any business or they're not even bothering to open. John Lewis, their flagship shop, closed apart from the food hall. So and these lockdown restrictions are destroying the economy. The mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, is destroying London's economy by putting up the congestion charge, increasing that, making it 7 days a week, not 5 days, 7 days a week now. You can't drive into central London. And it's running from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night. It's just a complete rip-off. It's highway robbery, literally, pardon the pun, it's highway robbery. We already pay road tax in this country. We already pay a lot of tax to build these roads, to maintain these roads, council tax and all those things. So we shouldn't be told you can't drive here without paying extra money. So that doesn't help. He's put up fares, he's restricted buses, now he's building a load of bike lanes. I'm not talking about bike lanes in local roads, I'm talking about bike lanes on main arterial roads going into London, which previously had 2 lanes, now it's got 1 lane. Well, if you squeeze all the traffic into 1 lane, what happens to the emissions and what happens to the traffic? It slows down. And what happens to the air? It gets worse. So Sadiq Khan is, in my opinion, not fit to be a mayor. He's on another planet. And in fact, in my opinion, you should just abolish the whole of the London Mayor's office. It's a useless office. You know, you've already got London boroughs who run their own system, like you've got Westminster, Lambeth Council. They're already a layer of government to start with. What do you need another layer of government to spend hundreds of millions of pounds or even billions on vanity projects and supposedly looking after the police, which could be done by the Home Office and I think a lot better. And, you know, they've got limited powers anyway. Just abolish it. Really just get rid of it. It was introduced by Ken Livingstone under a Labour government to kind of replace the GLC, which is another lunatic asylum of an authority. So, you know, the less layers of government you have, the less cost to taxpayers. So maybe we could start a campaign to just abolish the London Mayor's office. It's not needed. You've got central government up there. You've got district councils, London borough councils, which are big authorities in themselves, running that. And now you've got they're disputing things over building bike lanes on arterial roads. You've got Westminster Council and the London Mayor's office disputing things. So if I was in government, I would just, at a stroke of a pen, just abolish that whole layer of government. You could abolish actually several layers of local government, you know, because at the moment you've got district councils, county councils, parish councils. You know, you could get rid of at least 2 of those, I think, but yeah, that's another subject. So what's been happening this week? House prices have started to rise, as I was reporting yesterday, and they've actually started to creep up to the pre-lockdown levels. But is this a false dawn? Is this because there was pent-up demand before and now people have just completed on the purchases in May that they couldn't complete on in March and April? Or is it really a new dawn in property? Are people really going out and saying, let's forget about whatever's going on in the economy, let's buy a property? Well, I don't think so. Because if you've got 11 million people on furlough and whose jobs are at risk, by the way, because we don't know if those jobs are coming back, if you've got unemployment soaring, if you've got all the problems going on, if you've got lenders like the Nationwide restricting first-time buyers from a 95% mortgage to an 85% mortgage, if you've got all these things going on and we're in a recession and possibly leading into depression, how can the housing market just keep going up? Well, I think it's probably down to a few pockets of areas where, like in the north, Leeds and Manchester, and in the Midlands, in Nottingham, where you've seen a sort of spike in demand, maybe from buy-to-let investors, maybe from overseas investors, or it could be pent-up demand, as I said. Other parts of the country are not rising, but overall, demand is up, I think by 40%. New inquiries are up. But who's going to lend money to somebody in this economic climate who might be on job furlough? That's 1 in 4 of the workforce. Yes, there are some people that may work for the government or councils whose jobs are never at risk, but I can't see how the market... I personally wouldn't jump in and buy anything right now. I would do, still invest in property in different ways, but I wouldn't jump in and buy something at these sort of prices. Same with the stock market. I think the stock market is overpriced and will come down eventually to sensible levels. With a lot of these recessions, depressions, we see what we hope is a V-shaped recovery in the stock market. So it's up there at 1 minute, then it goes down suddenly, and then it comes up again. It's called a V-shaped recovery. But will that last? I don't think so. We saw in previous long recessions and depressions that there was this initial V-shaped recovery as the governments and the Federal Reserves and the central banks printed loads of money and whacked it into the markets. But then that didn't last very long, and then we saw a much deeper recession, a deeper fall, and a longer bear market that went on for years. And I think I fear that that's what will happen, because we're artificially holding it up at the moment. And in fact, the Federal Reserve have stepped in this week and banned US banks from buying back their own shares, and they've capped dividend payments. Now this is a major scandal. You might think, who cares what the Federal Reserve are doing? And this probably applies to UK banks as well. When they were getting a lot of money pumped into them by the government after the 2008-2009 crash, the banks were supposed to lend this out to small businesses to stimulate the economy. But I don't think they did that in sufficient numbers, because the economy really remained in session for years afterwards. And believe it or not, they're at it again. The Federal Reserve are pumping money into banks, and they're buying back their own shares, which just really increases the value of their own holdings. It increases the value of the shareholders, the management, who the CEOs are able to buy back their own shares, sometimes at stupid prices. And using government aid to buy back their own shares is not really what it's all about. And then paying out large dividend payment to shareholders, that's fine when you're making profits, but not when you're losing billions, as they are. They're possibly going to lose 700 billion this year. So the Federal Reserve had to step in and restrict them. You can read more about that on the web, I think, if you want to dive into that a little bit more. But that's what some of the banks have been doing. And we're seeing at the moment banks are restricting lending again. So that's why I think the banks can see that we're entering into a longer recession than people probably think there will be. And I don't think we're going to just bounce back like just like that. The lockdown and the coronavirus hasn't gone away. It's still there with us. It could even spike back again. So how can we hope that things will get back to normal this year? The tourist market is dead at the moment. The hospitality market may pick up in July. But by restricting things and saying you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to cut your tables down by half, the restaurants can barely make money like that. So let's see what happens. And I would ask the question, will your job be one of those jobs, one of the millions of jobs that could be phased out by this crisis and through innovation? Now, I was watching an interview with Patihas, his name's gone, Patihas from the Dragon's Den last night, and he said that in his business he's seen massive changes in innovation through this crisis, and he said he thinks that the innovation and the technology changes have been accelerated by 5 years, and he said that he will not be having that many. He'll be cutting back on the people he has in offices and having more people working from home and cutting back on office space. So these changes are going to come, and he'll probably be employing less people if he didn't say that on TV, but I imagine that's what will happen. So really, you've got to take care of your own economy. What can you do? One of the things you could do, instead of just watching Netflix in the lockdown, you could perhaps learn how to create a second income, maybe in property. Now, a lot of people think in property you need big money to invest in property, but there are ways of investing in property which don't require any money at all. Now, you've got to adapt to this new economic model coming up. So look at doing things online, but look at property. Could you start a property business with no money? The answer is yes. And there's actually a series of seminars on this week run by some friends of mine, and it's called a Property Week seminar, and there's another one on this evening. So I suggest you really look at that. Look at what you can do in the post-pandemic landscape in property. Look at how you can keep your money but earn more to support your family through these tough times, and how to make money stretch as far as possible to build your portfolio. And look at the fastest ways you can get cash from properties without using your own money. And look at even if you've got a property portfolio yourself already, look at how you can unlock this. Now, I can see this because I've been in property a long, long time, and I've seen how people can come behind me and from nowhere and accelerate past me by using new techniques, new ideas. So I would definitely look at this and look at commercials and commercial conversions as well without necessarily using your own money. There's lots of strategies. Don't go out and just buy something on the market right now. You think, prices are going up again, let's just buy something. Don't do that. Look at some of the strategies you can learn from these it's a free seminar, by the way. I'm not charging for this. I'm not even, it's not my seminar. This is somebody else's seminar. But I suggest you look at it. Have a look on my page, my Facebook page in a second. I'll put the link up. But definitely look at that, because property, as a long-term investment, it usually bounces back. It may go down. It may go down for a few years, but it always bounces back, and it always produces income if you buy the right thing. But you don't need to buy property. There are ways of owning and controlling properties without actually putting your own money into a situation. There are lots of different strategies you can employ to get into property without using your own money. So have a look at that. Have a look at the page, the links I'm going to put up in a moment, and I wish you really good luck with that, because I think there's still a lot of money to be made in property, and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a second. Don't forget, the UK, as I was saying, is a small country compared to the population, 60 million people. The population is growing. There's still a lot of people migrating here. The population is living longer, so that creates more demand for property. As people sell properties, they need maybe smaller units so that those properties get split up. There's more money trickling down through, billions trickle down through inheritance, and you've got, unfortunately, more divorces as well. You've got more people needing property, needing maybe smaller flats, rooms, studios to live in. So there's always demand for rentals, and even during this crisis, there is demand. Rental demand is actually up at the moment. There are more people now that the lockdown has ended. Rental demand, in fact, buyer demand is up 40% since March, when there was a massive drop in March and April, but rental demand is still there. And with the property, you can not only make money from future growth if you buy in the right areas, but you can make money from rental income as well. And you can use leverage, you can use bank money, you can use joint venture money, because people will lend you money and people will partner with you to buy property. Will they partner with you if you say, well, I've got this idea for an app, I've got this new business idea, we're going to run this business and this franchise, will you lend me money? Well, I don't know. But bricks and mortar, property, yes, people will lend you money. You never know who's got money to invest with you, but because the money is secured on something that they will consider as security, it's usually easy to raise money for property ventures. And I found this out when banks were coming in trying to sell me their pension schemes and their investment funds. And I said, well, will you lend me money if these funds are doing so well, why not lend me money? Give me a low interest loan and I'll put it into your funds. And they said, oh no, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. I said, why not? I said, well, it's too risky. Oh, your funds, why is that then? Well, because they're invested in shares. It could go down. But okay, so you want me to invest my money and my savings in that fund, which is too risky, as you say. It's too risky, but you want me to put my money in, but you're not prepared to put your money in and back me with a loan to buy those investments. Oh, yes. It's crazy. Actually, to be honest, I knew they weren't going to. I was just winding them up. I thought, let's have a bit of fun with these guys, just to see what they're going to say. But in a way, it's obscene that they're selling you investments which are risky for you to invest and save money in, but they wouldn't lend you money to put the money into that. They wouldn't put their own money into it, but they will put money into property. And I've been able to buy property, sometimes borrowing 85%, so I can buy, to keep the math simple, £100,000 property for 15 grand, and then the 85% that's owed, who's going to pay that off? The tenant. So you've got this property almost for free, and by the time you pay the loan off, inflation takes care of it anyway, because it's by the time you pay that loan off, it's not, the buying power of that money is not as high as it was. So property's been great for me. It's apart from starting my own business, it's been the best thing for me ever, apart from actually running the business, but that's hard work, building up a business, but property has been good for me. So there you go. Hope you have a great weekend, and the weather's fantastic today, so I'm going to go out in a minute. Stay safe out there, and do check out the property seminar webinar tonight. There'll be a great learning session for you, absolutely free from the comfort of your own home. You don't have to buy anything from them. Just suck up the information that they're giving you, and who knows, it could inspire you to build yourself a second income, to see you through the coming recession, and I think the coming shakeout in jobs that are coming. People don't realise what's coming because they're on furlough, they're being paid. Once that stops, we're going to see big problems in this economy. So check out that webinar. Thanks very much for listening. Thanks for those who joined me, Marius and Shujat, the radio entrepreneur there. Great to see you, and all the people who tune in from all over the world. Really love to have you on board, and do keep those comments coming in. Thanks very much. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.